Hello. Today I'm so excited about this. I'm making a pair of sandals. I've had these platform units sitting on my kitchen side for like weeks now, just waiting for a weekend that I had free that I could make some sandals on them. So the time has come. We're making some sandals. They are a little bit battered. I'll rewind and explain a little bit before I dive straight into it. I work for I Can Make Shoes. I do creative content and editing masterclass videos and things like that. So I'm not a shoemaker there, but I'm surrounded by shoemaking all the time. And being a crafty person myself, I had to get involved. So I've already made a couple of pairs of shoes before. I've made these orange platforms, these espresso brown contrast stitch platforms, some green fisherman sandals, and now I'm making some black platform sandals. I feel like there's a theme of what I like making the most, but it's what I wear the most. I love a good chunky sandal and I love a simple mule upper. So that is what we're making today. And I just wanted to show you how easy it is because I have zero footwear training, shoemaking experience. I now have some shoemaking experience, but before I joined and before I started making shoes, I had no shoemaking experience, duh. What I'm trying to say is that I'm a very beginner shoemaker. I don't have the professional training, but I've learned so much from I Can Make Shoes and I wanted to show you a little project. So yeah, I've got these. These were a different pair of sandals that I got on Vinted for £1. I've been like looking in charity shops and looking for things that I could deconstruct, and then I was like, I'll just look on Vinted. And there are so many cheap sandals where people are just trying to get rid of them. They are a bit battered. They have a few like scrapes, but I might just try and paint that or something and make it a bit less noticeable. But I didn't want to invest too much in this project if it wasn't going to go well. So yeah, I got those for about £1 and they had a different upper on them. So I got my boyfriend to rip that up because I could do it myself. If I've got him here, why wouldn't he just do it? So, and then now that those are ripped up, I basically need to make a new insole and a new upper and then glue it all together. So to make the upper, I've got this old leather skirt, which I also picked up on Vinted. And I think it's faux leather. I'm hoping it'll work just as well. I've always used real leather before, but I'll see how this works. So yeah, the plan is to use that leather to make an upper, to cover an insole that I'm gonna make, and then glue it all together. I'll have a pair of sandals. So let's get started. So here's all the materials you'll need to make these slider sandals. So you'll need your leather, I'm using this old skirt, an insole pattern, an upper pattern. I made the pattern for my upper, but if you want to take the guesswork out of it, you can just download a pattern from the I Can Make Shoes website. That way you just know you've got all the right measurements and allowances. I've then got one sheet of text on board and one foam sheet for my insoles, and then I've got my platform units, which I got from Vinted. So I started out by making my upper, so this meant tracing my pattern onto my leather 4 times. This is because I'm lining my upper with the same leather. If I was using a different lining leather, I would only trace 2 of this pattern on the upper leather, and then I would trace 2 of the pattern on some lining leather. So it completely depends on what you're doing, but because I was using the same leather for the upper and the lining, I needed 4 of this pattern traced and cut out. I then decided I wanted to fold my top line because I just really like how it looks. It's total personal preference. If you're using leather, you can totally leave it raw, but if you are using a fabric, you should really fold your top line to prevent fraying. So even though I was using a leather or a faux leather, I still wanted to fold it because I just like how it looks. So to fold it, I just needed to glue it up and fold it down. All of the allowances, again, are on the pattern to follow. For most of the shoemaking process, you only really need to use a water-based glue because you're just holding things down while you stitch. But my faux leather wasn't liking the water-based glue, so I had to switch to using the solvent glue, which really you only want to be using for the soles and
you know, when you have to stick things down really securely. So it's not ideal to use the solvent-based glue to, you know, like stick your linings and your uppers together, but my faux leather just wasn't behaving, so I switched to my solvent-based glue to stick everything together. For folding the top line, you probably could get some double-sided tape and stick it down like that just to help the stitching process, but where I also needed to attach my lining to my upper, I just thought I'd whip out the solvent-based glue and sit myself right near the window. So yeah, basically everything needs to get stuck together to prepare for stitching together. So I glued up my upper and my lining, stuck them together, cut them out, and then stitched the top lines on the sewing machine. So next I needed to create my insoles, which I made out of Texon board and a bit of foam for comfort. To get my insole pattern, I just traced around the inside of my platform unit, and then I used this to trace onto the Texon board. I then cut out my insoles. I also gave them a little file just to sand them down and make them smooth. And then I traced these onto the foam so that I could then stick them together and make them nice little padded insoles. I actually switched back to using my water-based glue because the foam and the Texon were working fine with it. I did also glue up my insole leather with the water-based glue because it seemed to be working fine now. I don't know if I just didn't put enough on when I was doing my uppers or didn't give it enough dry time, but yeah, it just wasn't sticking earlier. It was sticking now. So yeah, I switched back to using my water-based glue to get these all covered. When you're covering your insoles, you want to make sure you're making them really smooth because obviously you don't want lumps and bumps under your feet. And then when you're wrapping the leather underneath, you want to be putting pleats in just so that you're not having like big old clumps underneath the insole board. And then the final step is just to glue it all up and stick it all together. So I started off by gluing up the platform units and let those dry and get tacky whilst I glued up everything else. So I needed to attach the upper to the insole so then I could glue that all up and stick that down to the platform unit. Obviously you have to give things dry time, and that's probably what takes the longest, is just waiting for glue to dry and get tacky. But yeah, once it's glued up, dried, tacky, you stick it down, you've got a pair of shoes. This was obviously a really quick and easy project because I already had the platform unit. I chose a really simple upper, but it's a good one to start with, especially if you're a beginner, and I have to say, you get a really good shoe out of it as well.
And they're done. I think they turned out great. They're just classic little black wedges. Obviously there are like the little scuff marks which were there before, but as a little recycled shoe project, I'm very happy with it. I would say that the faux leather was a little bit trickier to work with like the glues, especially the water-based glue didn't seem to like it, so I ended up using the solvent-based glue a lot more, which is fine, but just a bit smellier really, and I could have done without it, but turned out well. There's also a couple of places, oh, you can't really see it anymore, maybe it was in the lasting allowance bit, but when I was stitching, you might see it in the stitching shots, that when the needle was punching through, it was kind of pulling up some of the faux leather bits, and that doesn't happen with real leather, so it's just something to note if you're thinking of using fake leather when making some shoes. But other than that, I really like how they've turned out. They're super comfy, they're my style, I'll wear them a bunch. So thank you for watching. Here are my shoes, and I'll see you soon.